Hey YouTube! Welcome back to part 2 of the Office PC review. In part 1, we reviewed this unit for work and gaming on Windows 10, but we know that Microsoft has ended support for Windows 10, and this move makes hardware like this one being left behind as e-waste when they still have plenty of life left on them. But we are not giving up just yet, and we will be doing what I believe is the best path forward for a machine like this one, having Linux installed on it. The idea here is to provide a plug-and-play solution for most users, and there are great distros out there that will fit the bill, but the one that I will be using today is Linux Mint. First things first, you will need a USB drive. Any 16GB flash drive will be more than enough for you to install Mint's image on it and plug it on your PC for installation. Going to Mint's download page, you will have 3 options of flavors to choose from: Cinnamon, Mate, and XFCE. There are key differences between them, and feel free to choose any, but I'll be going with Cinnamon because it's the one with the most features and this CPU will handle it just fine. After downloading Cinnamon from the website, you will need to flash Mint's image to the USB drive. There are various open source free option software to do this, but the one that I like most is Balena Etcher, which you can find the link for download in the description. And flashing USB is very easy. Open up Balena Etcher, it will ask you to select the image, and you just need to find your Mint's ISO image on your PC. In my case, I just grabbed it from the downloads folder. After that, it will ask for the target drive, and you just need to select your USB drive, make sure you're selecting the correct one, and that you don't have anything important on that drive. This process will wipe out any data still there. Having everything properly set up, just flash it and wait for the process to finish. It might take a few minutes, so pour yourself a nice cup of coffee while it's still running. Okay, now we have our USB drive ready to go. We'll be plugging into our PC, and we have a few options how to make the computer boot from the USB drive, but I recommend accessing the boot menu at the start. For this particular PC, I needed to press the F12 key while still booting, but different vendors will have different hotkeys for this option, so do some research on which is the correct hotkey for your unit. After booting from the USB drive, we go into the live section of Linux Mint, which is running directly from the drive. You just need to double-click the Install Linux Mint icon on the top left corner and start configuring. It will go on to your usual setup. After we finish those, it will finish installing Mint and ask you to restart your machine. Alright, Mint is installed on our PC and we are ready to go. The first few things you want to do is go over some notes about Mint and make sure that everything is updated. Mint is very straightforward and easy to use. Just open up Update Manager and see which updates are available for your PC. You can also double check your drivers on Driver Manager and see if those are up to date as well. Right away, you can see this distro is very user-friendly and will be a great desktop PC for daily usage. Browsing the internet is fast and snappy. The OS is very lightweight compared to Windows, and doing basic office work will be a breeze. You won't have access to Microsoft 365, but you can always use LibreOffice, which comes pre-installed on Mint, or Google Docs for this kind of tasks. Video playback here is also very smooth, like we had on Windows. Running 4K here on YouTube, a few drop frames, but overall, an excellent experience with this on Linux, and if you intend to stream movies and TV shows on this PC, you won't have any issues. Unfortunately, we don't have our usual benchmark tools for Linux, but we can run Geekbench here to get an idea of what to expect. It is scoring 1304 on single core and 4233 on multi-core. This is telling us that we shouldn't have much issues with light workloads, but let's see how it really performs. Starting out with Blender, we have 2 options to install it, via the Software Manager or downloading it directly from the Blender website. The Software Manager technically has the latest stable version that plays nice with Mint, but normally you will find an older version available there. I personally downloaded it from the website and didn't encounter any major issues while testing. As you can see here, it's running fairly well and it feels about the same performance that you would get on Windows. I don't really foresee a lot of issues if you're working on lightweight scenes, so this is definitely a good option for a student if you can grab a cheap one. We can't really run the Blender benchmark on Linux, so I ran a quick render of the barbershop scene and it took over an hour to finish. It is a very detailed and more heavyweight scene, so I was expecting it to take some time, but this test shows you will have some limitations when it comes to rendering. Unfortunately, DaVinci did not open due to the PC not having the proper graphics drivers. And that is due to our 340X GPU, which has very basic support on Linux. But before we unravel that issue, I would like to point out that for graphic design work, you need to run something like Infinite Suite using Wine has your emulation layer, which is a can of worms I won't be opening today, and not 100% certainty it will work. Or install free softwares like Inkscape or GIMP. I'm not particularly familiar with Inkscape and how it fares against Illustrator or Affinity Designer, but GIMP isn't really on par with its counterparts. If I were to use Linux for this kind of work, I would suggest using Photopea, which is a free browser-based photo editor. It is surprisingly good, it is free, with ads, but you can pay for the non-ad version, and it has a very similar UI to Photoshop and Affinity Photo, which makes it easy to work with right out of the gate. Now we get to the fun part. As we saw with DaVinci, and this was a theme with games as well, our GPU is just too old. The main issue here is that there isn't much support on Linux for the R5 340X. And I actually tested some games right away and found out most of them were unplayable, even getting to the conclusion that this GPU wasn't worth keeping if you were sticking with Linux. That was of course until I found out Valve's GitHub page about Proton and directions on how to set up your 200 and 300 series Radeon GPU on terminal. I'll link the page in the description, but quickly showing, you'll just have to punch these commands on your terminal one line at a time, which will install drivers and configure your distro accordingly. After you get this done, make sure you restart your PC and you're good to go. And where once was a poor experience, Cuphead is now running at 1080p perfectly fine. I was ready to give this GPU a hard time for playing this game at 3 FPS, now I get to swallow my own criticism for not properly researching the solution before. Before properly setting up the GPU, Shredder's Revenge worked okay at 1080p, but stay a couple of frames below 60 FPS on average. Since this is the pre-configured footage, I have run the game once more and, what do you know, running butter smooth at 1080p 60 FPS, even with the CRT shader zone which was making the game unplayable before. Hades was another game that wasn't playable at all before our configuration, and with that done, performance here is similar to Windows. 1080p does struggle a bit, but mostly staying above 30, and lowering to 900p will get you around 45 FPS on average. If you want to hit 50 or more, you will have to lower the resolution to 720p. Moving to some older 3D games, even before our solution, Half-Life 2 was having decent performance at 1080p, with a very high mix settings. And running Bioshock Infinite, 900p at low settings kept us above the 30 FPS mark, for the most part at least. But you can always go to 720p low for improved performance. Not amazing, but mostly playable. Trying out a couple fighting games, Injustice at 900p pretty much on low settings, it will hover around 35 FPS. Occasional dips under 30, but nothing too bad, very playable like this. The other one I tried was Ultra Street Fighter 4, and I wanted to bring this one up because of some issues I have encountered. The game does not go full screen, and I can't find a proper setting to fix this. And another thing, I haven't been able to load any level here, just a basic wireframe background every time I get to a fight. The game ran at 60 FPS at a 900p resolution, but I can't say it was playable since the experience wasn't great, and I'm pretty sure if the levels loaded properly, we would get different results. And to close up gaming for this part, Doom Eternal is running pretty much on par with what we saw on Windows, struggling to keep above 20 FPS and going below when you have lots of enemies and particles on screen. But I hardly see any graphical artifacts popping up like we did before. But still wouldn't recommend playing this game on this GPU. Now let's move to some emulation. God of War Chains of Olympus on PPS SPP, running great upscaled at 1080p. Haven't seen any issues at all, very smooth gameplay, and you might even be able to upscale to 1440p or 4K, depending on the game. On Dolphin, testing F-Zero at 720p worked like a charm, and seems like this GPU will be able to handle GameCube games at that resolution for the most part on Linux. But as usual, it will really depend on a game-to-game basis. On PS2, I'll first show a pre-configuration test for God of War 2, and we had to run this on native. Upscaling to 720p made the game unplayable, so I would recommend keeping PS2 games at native for the most demanding games like this one. However, I'm not sure what happened here, but while Dolphin worked okay with a GPU configuration on the terminal, it seems to have interfered with PS2 and not in a good way. Even on native resolution, God of War 2 is now unplayable. I tried Sly Cooper just to make sure it wasn't an emulator issue, and it's running okay at 720p, but it seems like the fix for PC games might require you to adjust your emulator settings. And once again, we'll be removing this GPU and moving over to the HD 530 graphics. And this one was pretty much a plug-and-play solution, without needing to go over the terminal to tweak the GPU settings. Before gaming, of course, we need to look at Blender, and it feels pretty much as our previous Windows testing, with the app being more responsive working with the iGPU. And render times took roughly the same here. And for DaVinci, I did manage to run it before, but the tweaks that I made for the R5 GPU for further testing unfortunately broke the installation. A fresh installation of Mint will probably solve this issue, but in a nutshell, DaVinci is doable with this iGPU, just not really recommended. Now on to gaming. Again, we didn't need to set up anything extra for this to work, and this is definitely a big plus here. Starting with Cuphead, the game runs at 1080p just fine on this iGPU. And now Hades at 1080p, looking great and running butter smooth on this iGPU. This shows superior performance to the 3040X. So far, this is mirroring what we saw in the Windows testing. Some Bioshock Infinite now, 900p low settings. We're getting an okay performance, but we've got some dips below 30 FPS on open areas. Not the best setup to run this game, but it's doable if you don't mind keeping at a frame rate. Going 720p very low settings will net you more FPS, somewhere around 40. Another one I tried was Injustice. First I went to 1080p on low settings and it's doable, averaging 37 to 40 FPS. Going to 900p low settings, we're getting closer to 50. Still looking good and an improved performance to the 340X. And last but not least, we had to try doing internal again and I was sure it wouldn't work. I had to reboot the PC when it froze in the first attempt and force shut the game the second time. But they say the third time's the charm. And it's not beautiful, it's not blazing fast, I don't recommend this at all, but it works. 720p lowest possible settings and the game is running around 20 to 23 FPS, getting to the mid-10s when you have a lot of enemies and particles on screen. It's a way better performance than we had on Windows, and I almost want to say it's playable, but like with the AMD GPU, I know that's a bit of a stretch. Not a bit, a lot. Still, very surprising and impressive that it ran at all. Now moving over to emulation, we got similar results when we tried the 530 on Windows. Starting out with Dolphin, we managed to run F-Zero on a 720p resolution and stable at 60 FPS. A little bit of stutters at the start, but definitely just the shader caching happening while we played the game. Now with PCS X2, God of War 2 has improved performance when using Vulkan even when upscaled to 720p. But unfortunately for some reason, I got a lot of graphical artifacts when using it. Not sure if it's the Intel drivers for Linux, but changing the renderer to auto, or if you prefer OpenGL, I had to go to native resolution and still couldn't quite get a stable 60 FPS. But definitely had a better experience without any issues besides the occasional slowdown. We got some really interesting results with this testing on Linux. During our Windows testing, we came to the conclusion that having the 340X wasn't really an advantage. More of a, if it came with the unit, that's fine situation, but wasn't worth getting something similar if you only ever had was the i7 integrated graphics. Here, although we found a solution for most games not running at all with the R5, the iGPU seems to be more responsive when working with Blender, it is as good as Windows for daily use, gaming performance is pretty much the same with some variations and compromise. DaVinci is doable, although not really recommended, and you don't have to do any additional tinkering on terminal. Remember, not everybody is keen on learning Linux in depth. Most people just want a simple plug-and-play solution. And since installing Linux in a unit like this would be the preferred choice over keeping to Windows 10, I believe the iGPU brings more to the table than the 340X on this system. Here on this channel, we are all about reusing as many components as we can, but the R5 would be of better use on a different system. And for this particular setup on Linux, I would definitely recommend going with the integrated graphics or getting a GPU that will deliver better performance than the R5. And now you must be wondering, which GPU was the mysterious one that we're going to be using on part 3? Well, it was going to be only the Quadro T400 4GB version, but since starting this video, I also got a hold of the Intel Arc 310. Because of that, we'll be having a fun showdown between these cards and see which one performs best. You might just be surprised with some of the results. I really do hope you all enjoyed this video. Please subscribe if you haven't already and turn on that notification button if you want to see more content like this. It would be much appreciated and help this channel grow. Leave a thumbs up if the video was awesome, or a thumbs down if it wasn't that great. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and we'll see you on the next one. Cheers!